Alrighty then, it's time for a Jungle Wukong game, and I'll be using this one as a discussion piece. Which one a lot of players have been asking me, Stonewall, why don't you play a lot of Jungle Wukong, or what are your thoughts on him? The thing is, I actually do play a lot of Jungle Wukong. The issue is that he's part of my list of champions that I bust out when I just want to carry, because whether or not Wukong is good or bad, he's very good at carrying people from the jungle. The problem is he shares that same spot with other champions like Hecarim and Pantheon, and right now one of his most greatest counter picks is out there right now, Jaina. But thankfully my team secured her this time around, so I got to play Wukong. Hooray for me. Anyways, the reason why I want to discuss Jungle Wukong or Wukong in general, and by the way I gotta tell you right now, if there's a lot of noise in the background, is because they're having a pool party outside, and they're gonna be having a pool party basically every summer, so just kind of bear with it. A bunch of monkey business outside. Anyways, Wukong is an interesting champion in that while having a simple champion isn't particularly bad, having too many simple champions causes a balance issue with League of Legends. And the reasoning for that is because when too many simple champions exist and they all do very similar simple things, you end up just picking the one that's better for the job, or the one who's just flat out better. There's not that many differences between them. And while this might piss off some people, and just for criticizing Wukong in general, Wukong is very similar to Xin Zhao. And he's very similar to a lot of the all-in kind of melee champions like Pantheon. But mostly he's very similar to Xin Zhao. Both of them have like a dash skill, a burst ability on their Q, and some sort of either like sustain or playmaking or some shit like that on their W. And in Wukong's case is invisibility, and in Xin Zhao's is steroid. And their ultimate is a knock-up or knockback of some kind. They're very similar. And they kind of approach things in a similar way, pressing your E, hitting them with Q, and then using your ultimate or doing some shit like that. Of course, the differences do come in that Xin Zhao has more CC, and Wukong has flat out more damage and more AoE damage. And also he can make some more levels of play than Xin Zhao. Well, the point still stands. In both cases, both champions are only predominantly picked if their numbers are ridiculous or some item is allowing them to be ridiculous. So they constantly face that balance issue, in that if they can't absolutely shit wreck someone with just an EQ or the EQ ultimate or some small kind of combo, then they're not going to be picked. If they can harass somebody and survive to do it again, then they might be picked, but in most cases they have to just be able to shut out people. Otherwise there's no real reason to pick them. And that's why Wukong is an interesting discussion, because out of all these other champions, he's the one with at least more nimbleness and more play-making capabilities, mostly because of his stealth and because he can build a little bit more damage thanks to his passive being able to give him some health and whatnot. Plus, his ultimate, out of all the other ultimates for these type of AD casters, can at least allow him to do something no matter how shit-wrecked he got in lane or in the jungle. So, yeah, Wukong has some utility, and that helps prop him up. So it's like, if you don't remember, Jungle Wukong or Wukong had a far different kit before he was released. They thought that they couldn't release him because it would be too complicated or too difficult for players to play him, so they gave him this really cookie cutter, very basic kit. And unfortunately, it kind of put him in this spot, like where I mentioned, where he's either played or not played. I'm pretty sure some more experienced Wukong players are going to chime in and tell me I'm wrong or something. But fundamentally, in competitive, he's kind of had that same issue. He's never been played in competitive just to play him, just for any strategic value. He's only ever been played if he's ever abused an item or he himself was a little unbalanced. So in that case, I gotta bring up the question. For Jungle Wukong, or hell, Lane Wukong, what can be done to make him at least better? Should Riot consider increasing his numbers and increasing the way they're spread out? Because right now, like his E, I'm pretty sure Riot wanted his Q to be maxed out first, but his E ended up being the better ability. But now they can't really tamper with it, and maybe make his ultimate do something more or whatever. Or should they rework him? It's like, it's just one of those kits that I know it fully functions. It's not a absolutely terrible kit. He can win, he can carry, he can do all those great things, but he can never really exist in a sort of competitive spectrum. In comparison to a lot of the champions, he comes out short. So And I also brought this up because in the Pantheon video, people mentioned what other champions are the fuck bitches champions. What other champions are there that just sort of exist to carry games but have very little strategic value, especially after Riot decides to nerf them down. So yeah, this video, this discussion, my decision to even play them came from the whole Pantheon game, and people wanted me to discuss that. So I'm bringing up the question to you guys. What do you guys think about Wukong's position in the game? On one hand, having a very simple champion who can carry people, who can do some pseudo-initiation and cleanly just kick people's asses might be healthy for the game for sure. You know, Wukong can help other players get better. But if that's the case, Riot should probably make him a much cheaper champion and stop leaving the IP prices for certain champions really high, right? I think Wukong, if they want to keep him with this kind of skill set, they should like just make him the entry-level champion. It's totally fine for some champions to not be played competitively if Riot wants them to be more of a, let's call it a starter's champion for jungling, starter's champion for AP casting or whatever. Now you've seen champions like Master Yi. In competitive, they don't really have that much of a place, but it's easy to pick up and easy to learn and whatnot. And I'm pretty sure Riot doesn't really care too much about changing them up if it really helps newer players sort of get into the game and practice. And so as such, I think Wukong can fit that place rather well as long as Riot's willing to lower his price and encourage players to play him. On the other hand, though, building him is a little bit more restrictive. And I don't mean that he doesn't have a lot of item builds, because surprisingly he does. It's more that if you don't have a set plan for how you're going to build them, you're going to fuck yourself up. Like, I've been told by better Wukong players than me when I was asking them, so what's his build now? They said, oh, just make sure that if you're taking a build, you don't try to deviate or fuck around with it. If you're going to go tank, you have to sort of build a certain kind of tank build and be strict with it. You can't really be malleable. And when it comes to malleability, I've spoken way too much about that in other videos, so I'd rather not go into in depth to it again. So, anyways, yeah, you can see this video in the background. I was just playing with fans. I mixed it up with new fans and the older fans, and they were just, you know, we were being a little bit strategic, but mostly they can pick. I let them pick whoever they want. So it was rather fun. We already got to see Talia and Wukong work together. It was kind of nifty. The game itself had some value, mostly in the way that my team responded to things, but overall it was pretty basic. You got to see some really good Wukong ultimates, also one really bad one, and that's kind of the general gist of Wukong, at least in team fights. And later on into the game, one of the worst things about him is that he relies way too much on his ultimate, and if he can't get a good one, then he pretty much can't do anything. So, either way, to reiterate, the main thing about this whole video is that what can be done about a champion who works exactly how they plan to, but because he's got so many other champions that can sort of do what he does, and they're very similar to each other in playstyle and function, they can't really coexist together because the best one out of all of them will always just supersede them all. So in your opinion, what should be done about a situation such as that? Should Riot promote make them more diverse so each of them can be considered, or should Riot just make them into beginner champions like Wukong? Hooray for Wukong, I guess. This channel is supported by my sponsors, Crunchyroll and Loot Crate. Check out the description below for links to the websites. Signing up for any trials, including Crunchyroll's free anime trial, greatly supports my channel. Also remember to give the video a like to support the channel and subscribe if you haven't yet. I've also made a Patreon now, and if you wish to support me through that medium, then I welcome it.